Hey guys, it's Sero, and in this video, I'll go in depth on what exactly is a default and how you can abuse them to win a lot more games to quickly progress up the ranked ladder. This is the first part of a series I'm calling All Brain, No Aim, where I will try to teach you guys all the tricks and strategies I learned that helped me rank up from Silver to Radiant. Since many players over-prioritize aim while failing to properly improve their game sense, I've decided to create this series to help you guys grow your brains and actually improve at Valorant. So without wasting any time, let's dive straight into it. So what is a default really? Simply put, a default is a team tactic in which each player is fighting for map control, holding for pushes, and gathering information in different parts of the map. A default has many advantages, and there are 4 main reasons for why you should default. To learn your opponent's tendencies and setups, to take map control using utility, to hold for aggressive pushes from the defenders, and because it gives your team enough time to make a plan mid-round based on the information gathered. You might be asking, how do I know when I need to default? When in doubt, you can ask yourself these questions. Are your 5-man rush B executes failing? Are you being pushed by the defenders while losing trades? And are you unsure of your enemy setups and where they are playing? If any of these are the case, then defaulting is the solution to getting your team back in control and start winning rounds. There are different ways to default depending on what type of play or control you're looking to achieve. The most fundamental default variation is taking mid control and holding for pushes from the extremities. Extremities are choke points farthest from the center of the map. Places like showers and B long on bind and A and B main on Ascent can be identified as extremities. Although a default will vary from map to map, they will mostly resemble a 1-3-1 split, or in other words, one player on each extremity while the rest fight for mid control. This approach essentially lets you take the round slower, as you'll be able to get the first blood if they decide to push on any side of the map, while also acting on any information you're able to gather. Another big advantage is the ability to leave lurkers that can collect important information and kill rotating enemies. To better explain this concept, let's look at an example. Let's say your team is on Ascent and starts the round with a 1-3-1 default. As the round progresses, the defenders begin getting worried about an A split due to the presence of a player in A main and the players in mid, which pressures a B player to rotate. The lurker in B main can kill the rotator and take the site for free, guaranteeing a man advantage post-plant. The lurker doesn't necessarily need to get a kill to find impact either. In another instance, if a player is able to take showers control on bind, they can hear if enemies rotate off the A site, and can call for their teammates to come back to A, where they will have the site for free. As Gares, current coach of 100 Thieves, puts it.
And that is what, in my opinion, like a default is you dictate the setup of another team, assuming they don't push into you. If they push into you, that's great. You don't even need to show your default, right? Like you've done nothing to earn this round, and you've just basically spawned and went to spots. You've gotten a free kill, and now you can just kind of play off of the kill. And that's when understanding rotations, is super valuable.
Another crucial topic you need to understand is map control, the main reward of defaulting and the secret behind winning all your games. A common misconception people have is thinking that a default is simply a strategy where the attackers split up and just hold and wait for pushes. Although pro teams do sometimes passively hold for pushes, this isn't exactly what a default is, and you shouldn't aim to do this every round. Instead, you should look to cautiously obtain map control, which is actually the main point of defaulting. If you didn't already know, map control is the concept of fighting for portions of the map that are contestable by both teams. When fighting for these areas on the map, it's essential to be using utility to obtain valuable information, force the enemies off their positions, while most importantly trading your teammates as you take space. A 1-for-1 trade always favors the attacker side, since it opens up holes in the defense, allowing you to easily push through. Since denying information is an essential part of defaulting, the use of utility, such as smokes, comes heavily into play. Let's go back to the standard default on Ascent, with one person holding for A and B main pushes and the rest working mid. You would typically smoke cat to deny any early peeks, dart bottom mid, and smoke arches to take control and fully deny information on mid. This pressures the defenders as the market player is clueless as to what the attackers can be setting up mid, which then forces the cat player to give up space and fall back to tree. This denial of information puts the defenders in a very vulnerable positions and leaves gaps in their defense that you can exploit. When defaulting, however, mid doesn't have to be the only part of the map that you focus on. Rather, you can do 2-2-1 or even 2-1-2 splits to take control of the extremities and force the use of utility in the case of an execute. These types of defaults are helpful for taking orbs, wasting utility of the defenders, and drawing rotations to either side of the map. Remember to keep in mind that most of these extremities are common op spots, so be sure to use utilities such as a Sova Dart or Drone, Skydog, or Fade Prowler to force them off the position. Also, if you're the player that's by themselves in any default, it's crucial that you focus on staying alive since you don't have all the necessary utility or a teammate to trade you in case you have to take a fight. In these cases, it's best to let your teammates work for map control on parts of the map where they're stacked up while you simply maintain your position, since the risk of you dying heavily outweighs the map control you might be able to take. To illustrate this, take a look at this perfect default during the Optic vs Guard VCT Grand Finals. Optic notices that Guard has Opt A lobby, so they devise a strategy to push the Opper off. The Breach stuns A long to deny anyone from holding the angle, along with the Sky, flashing long to blind anyone peeking. The Neon sprints up A lobby to quickly control it, while the rest of Optic are holding pushes mid. As you can see, the Omen is holding for C long push since he is able to use his utility globally around the entire map, while the Breach, after stunning A long, holds mid window push, and Ye is holding Garage with an op to catch anyone pushing out. Notice how Optic is playing safer on portions with less teammates. If they tried to take mid control while also trying to take A main, they would have likely lost this round since they wouldn't have been able to trade their teammates who would try to take control of mid. Therefore, if your team is taking map control somewhere, don't try to take another part of the map by yourself, because if you get pushed by the defenders, then you'll most likely lose that part of the map, putting your team in a big disadvantage. This brings me to my next point of fake defaulting. In order to properly throw fake defaults, you must first learn how to condition your opponents. Conditioning is a relatively advanced concept, but fear not, because I'll explain it in a way that even your brain-dead ranked teammates can understand. Conditioning is when you run the same or very similar defaults for multiple rounds in a row, resulting in your opponents getting used to it. You might be thinking that this is a disadvantage, since your enemies can predict what you're going to do. However, this is exactly what makes conditioning so useful. For example, by using the same utilities such as a smoke cat and a dart bottom mid, your enemies will be tricked into thinking that it's just another slow default, while everyone on your team quickly creeps their way back into A main. From this point, everyone on your team can play contact, which means to continue walking up and taking space until the enemies see you, and once they do, you can all execute the site together. The enemies won't be expecting the sudden explosive 5-man push, thus catching your enemies off guard, who are unprepared to hold the site. The rotations will also be significantly slower since they were expecting a default and played anchored positions on other parts of the map. So remember to use conditioning to your advantage as often as possible, since it will allow you to run fake defaults, throwing your enemies off guard and securing some free rounds. Another important point I want to quickly mention is a mistake I often see lower ranked players make during defaults, and that is dying with a spike. Although you might not be entirely sure, you should always have a general idea of what site you want to end up at. And even if you don't, you should just still drop the spike in a safe spot so your teammates can easily get it. The important thing is that you do not take the spike in a default and push it up. The reason this is such a big issue is because if the spike carrier dies, the defenders will instantly know what side you're leaning towards, and this ruins the whole default, which is based on the idea that the defenders don't know which site you will attack. So just as a rule of thumb, always leave the spike far back in a safe area that the defenders shouldn't be able to reach. So now that you have a solid understanding of defaulting, let's go over the important standard default setups you need to know for each map, starting with Haven. On Haven, A lobby control is crucial for a proper attack half, since neglecting to show presence A can give the defenders a good read on where the attackers will execute. To gain this control, you can use a Sova Dart, Breach Stun, Sky Flash for long, or a Jet Smoke or Cypher Cage for the cross. Meanwhile, the Smoke Agent should be holding for the C long push since their utility can be used across the whole map. Lastly, to take space mid, never dry peek out a window as there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different angles you can get killed from. Instead, you can sky flash from the window or use Sova Drone to reduce the chances of getting opt or pre-aimed. Next, let's move on to Icebox, where most space is taken in pairs. On Icebox, a smoke or Viper orb mid is crucial as it puts constant pressure on the defenders, since it gives the attackers the ability to walk into kitchen, under tube, and even under boiler. And a Sova Dart is most useful on A as it detects anyone aggressing and helps shut down any early attempts to flank. Moving on to Breeze, where having mid control is crucial as it heavily denies information and opens up the possibility to split or fake sites due to the long rotation times for the defenders. Having a Viper orb at the doors in halls is a perfect way to deny vision as well. Overall, on Breeze, stacking heavier towards one side of the map and leaving a lurker is very effective due to the long rotation times, which allows you to fake sites easily. Bind is a little different since there is no mid portion of the map. Instead, most defenders will contest the extremities, be long or showers. It's important to note that the player holding the opposite extremity should do so from a long distance to prevent giving away easy picks. For example, if your team decides to fight for shower control, then the player holding B long should hold it from the fountain or from T-spawn, and vice versa. Hookah is also a major part of the map to control since it puts the defenders under pressure of a B execute. However, since many defenders choose to fight for Hookah, you would need to use utilities such as a Raised Roomba, Skydog, Fade Prowler, and even an Omen Flash to secure the space. Defaulting on Ascent is focused usually more on mid control with an early cat smoke and a dart bottom mid to alleviate the threat of oppers. If you wish to lean towards market and a potential B split, then have someone smoke deep mid to allow you to fight market without the defenders being able to help. If you opt towards cat, it's best to have a drone or dog clear the smoke and close angles to help you take control of tree. To take control of A and B main, you can use a KO knife, a Sova drone, or an Omen Flash to clear the close oppers so you don't lose a player early on. Lastly, let's talk about Fracture, which is probably the most complicated map to default on since there is no midsection of the map and essentially 4 different extremities. Because of this, there are 2 main points to focus on, those being conditioning and playing very slow on each extremity. Since most teams pick Breach on Fracture, it's a good strategy to stun A main off rip as a way to show presence and also waste utility, such as a raised nade. Conditioning the enemy to this breach stun will give them false information of a A presence if your team instead decides to group B for an execute. Also, playing passive comes into even bigger effect if you're by yourself, since the defenders can choose to fight or make a play at any of the 4 extremities, so it's crucial to not give up easy picks. Remember that defaulting is all about playing a slow game and picking apart the enemy's defense little by little. So when you catch yourself realizing that those 5-man rush B executes aren't working, consider doing a default to start winning rounds and regain control of the match. If you believe that your teammates are too bad and incapable of defaulting, consider watching my Dealing with Bad Teammates guide. If you found this video helpful and would like me to continue this series, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Peace.